The first time I saw him, I was halfway through burning my own dinner. The smoke alarm was screaming, my skillet looked like a battlefield, and then there he was, standing across the street with his sleeves rolled up, laughing at my disaster like the universe had sent him just to witness my humiliation. I wanted to hate him instantly. People like Mequit, invisible, never enough didn't get to cross paths with people like him. But life doesn't care about the rules we invent to protect ourselves. It was late spring in Willow Creek, a small American town that looked perfect from the outside. White fences, Sunday church bells, neighbors who knew far too much about you. To me, though, it was a place where whispers had teeth and the past hung over my head like smoke that wouldn't clear. I'd been here my whole life. Every cracked sidewalk and fading porch light knew my story, even when I didn't want to tell it. People remembered mistakes longer than they remembered kindness, and I had made plenty of the kind that stuck. And then Daniel arrived. Daniel Hayes, 30 years old, newly hired lawyer, freshly moved from New York to escape some life he rarely talked about. His house was right across from mine. From day one, he looked like he didn't belong in this town of gossip and stale coffee. His suits were too sharp, his smile too deliberate. He walked like a man who had already decided he wasn't going to let anyone define him. I hated how much I noticed. The night after the smoke alarm debacle, I ran into him again outside the grocery store. I was clutching cheap ramen and paintbrushes I didn't really need, hoping to get in and out before anyone could remind me of who I used to be. "Guessing you're not auditioning for MasterChef anytime soon," he said as he passed by, voice smooth, a hint of teasing but not cruel. I froze. Most people in Willow Creek didn't talk to me unless they had to. He didn't know that rule yet. "Cooking isn't my strong suit," I muttered, adjusting my grip on the brushes. "Lucky for you, eating is one of mine." He flashed a grin, the kind you'd normally roll your eyes at, except something about his delivery made it feel like he meant it. Like maybe he was testing if I'd let myself laugh. I didn't. Not then. But I wanted to. I should tell you something before this story goes too far. I wasn't ready to be looked at the way Daniel looked at me. Because when he looked at me, it wasn't like he saw the screw-up, the loner, the boy who once loved the wrong person and paid for it in whispers and cruel stares. He didn't see the guy who still flinched walking past the high school football field because of what had happened there years ago. Now when Daniel looked at me, it was like he saw someone worth listening to, worth noticing, worth waiting for, and I didn't know how to survive that kind of attention. The first time he came into my art studio, it wasn't an accident. I had been working late, surrounded by canvases no one ever bought, the smell of oil paint clinging to my clothes. The knock on the door startled me. Nobody ever came by. Not here, not to me. "Sorry to bother," Daniel said, leaning against the doorframe. He'd shed the jacket of his suit, left only in a white shirt rolled to the elbows. But I saw the light on, figured I'd introduce myself properly, neighbor etiquette and all. I blinked at him, paintbrush still in hand, like I'd forgotten how to talk. "You're here," I finally managed. Sharp observation. He smiled, easy but not mocking. His gaze drifted to the half-finished canvas behind me. "That yours?" I swallowed hard. "Yeah, just something I'm working on. It's beautiful." Nobody in this town had ever called my work that. At best, they called it different. At worst, well, you can imagine. But Daniel said it like fact, not flattery. Like there was no room for argument. The thing about people like Daniel is that they don't knock on your door just once. Soon it was coffee on my porch steps, him pretending he was just passing by even when it was obvious he wasn't. It was late-night conversations leaning against my mailbox, our voices low like the world might hear. It was the way his hand would brush mine when he passed me something, lingering half a second longer than necessary. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, for him to hear the rumors, for him to decide I wasn't worth the trouble. But he didn't, and that terrified me more than anything, because the truth? I had stopped believing in love a long time ago. I had stopped believing anyone could look at me and see more than the mess I had made of my life. But Daniel made me believe again, even when I didn't want to. Even when the whole town started watching us, whispering louder with every step he took closer to me. That was the beginning of everything, the spark before the fire, The moment I realized this wasn't just going to be a harmless neighborly friendship. It was going to change everything. And I wasn't sure if I was ready to let it. Daniel didn't back away when the town began to notice. That was the first real warning sign for me, because people in Willow Creek didn't forget, and they definitely didn't forgive. The first whispers started at the diner. I had gone in for coffee one morning, only to feel the weight of half the room's eyes on me. By the time I sat down, I heard it. That's him. The artist. You know, the one who, and then silence, as if saying it aloud would summon something dangerous. When Daniel walked in 10 minutes later, the silence broke into a ripple of murmurs. He didn't miss it. His jaw tightened, but he smiled at me anyway, bold as daylight, sliding into the booth across from mine. "You order me pie?" he asked, as if we'd been meeting for breakfast for years. I shook my head, trying to hide the way my chest squeezed. "You're insane." "Maybe," he said, grinning, "but I'm hungry, and I figure you owe me after the smoke alarm incident." I wanted to disappear. Instead, I laughed, quiet, reluctant. And for the first time in years, I didn't care who was watching. By summer, Daniel had woven himself into my life in ways I couldn't unravel. He'd show up at my studio with takeout, sit on the floor surrounded by half-finished canvases, and ask questions no one else ever asked. Why did I use blue in the corner of a painting about loneliness? Why did I never sign my name at the bottom? Why did I paint doors so often, and why were they always closed? The truth was, I didn't know. Or maybe I knew too well, and admitting it felt like peeling skin from bone. But Daniel never pushed. He just listened, his eyes steady, as if whatever answer I gave, broken, messy, incomplete, was enough. And then there were the nights. Nights where we'd end up walking down the empty main street, streetlights flickering above us. Nights where his shoulder brushed mine, and I thought I might combust from the heat of something so simple. Nights where he'd tell me pieces of his own past. The cases he'd lost in New York, the city noise he missed, the loneliness of starting over. "You ever feel like you're running from something and toward it at the same time?" he asked once, his voice low, almost drowned by the sound of cicadas. I nodded. All the time. We didn't kiss that night. We didn't need to. The air between us was already alive, thick with everything unspoken. But small towns don't leave things unspoken for long. It started with questions disguised as curiosity. Mrs. Parker next door asking why Daniel always seemed to be at my place. The guy at the hardware store raising his brows when I came in with Daniel beside me. The pastor's wife pausing just a little too long before saying good morning. Then came the comments. "Strange friendship, isn't it? Doesn't he have better things to do than hang around here?" And finally, the looks. Cold, cutting, filled with the kind of judgment I'd known all my life. I'd spent years shrinking under those looks. Years pretending I didn't hear the names, didn't see the doors closing. Daniel, though, he didn't flinch. One evening, after a particularly loud confrontation outside the grocery store, some man muttering a slur just loud enough for us to hear, I told Daniel to stop. "Stop what?" he asked, his eyes flashing. "Stop being seen with me. Stop giving them a reason to talk. You don't know what it's like here." My voice cracked, anger and shame twisting together. "You can't fix this place, Daniel. And you can't fix me." For a long moment he said nothing, just stood there in the fading light, his hands clenched at his sides. Then, quietly, "I'm not trying to fix you. I'm trying to know you. And I'm not about to let their poison decide how I do that." I wanted to believe him. God, I did. But old wounds have long memories, and mine bled fresh every time the world reminded me I wasn't safe. The first time we really touched wasn't planned. I'd had a rough day. My father had stopped me outside the post office, his words sharp and cutting as always. He still carried the same disgust he'd had the day I was outed years ago, and he made sure I felt it. By the time I got home, I was shaking. Daniel showed up not 10 minutes later, as if he'd sensed it. He found me sitting on the porch steps, head in my hands. "What happened?" he asked softly. "Nothing. Same old story." My voice was flat, brittle. He sat beside me, close enough that our knees touched. For a while, he didn't say anything. Then, Slowly, he reached over and covered my hand with his. His palm was warm, steady, grounding. I should have pulled away. I should have remembered the eyes of the town, the weight of my father's voice, the danger of wanting too much. Instead, I held on. And in that moment, the world felt bearable again. The kiss came weeks later, on a night thick with summer heat. We had stayed up late in the studio, music playing low, canvases spread around us. Daniel had been teasing me about the way I furrowed my brow when I painted, and I had thrown a rag at him in mock annoyance. He caught it, laughing, his eyes lit with something I couldn't name. When the laughter faded, silence filled the space charged, trembling. He stepped closer. So close I could see the flecks of green in his dark eyes, the scar on his chin, the way his breath hitched as if he were waiting for permission. I didn't give him words. I just leaned in. The kiss was tentative at first, almost cautious. Then it deepened, heat flooding every corner of me, years of fear cracking under the weight of something undeniable. His hand cupped the back of my neck, gentle yet certain, and I let myself fall. For once, I didn't think about the town or my father or the past. For once, I just thought about him. Of course, happiness never came without a fight. The rumors exploded after that night. Maybe someone had seen us. Maybe gossip simply grew out of thin air. Whatever the reason, within days it seemed like everyone knew or thought they knew. The whispers turned into stares. The stares turned into comments. One afternoon, someone spray-painted a word on the side of my studio, ugly and cruel. I stood there staring at it, frozen, until Daniel showed up. Without hesitation, he grabbed a bucket of paint and covered it, his jaw tight with fury. "They don't get to define you," he said when I tried to stop him. Not anymore. But the damage was done. The studio that had once been my refuge now felt tainted. Every brushstroke felt heavy with eyes I couldn't escape. And still Daniel stayed. One night I broke. "I can't do this," I told him, my voice raw. "I can't keep pretending like it doesn't hurt, like I'm strong enough to fight them all. I'm not. I've tried before, and it nearly destroyed me." Daniel looked at me, his eyes full of something I hadn't seen in anyone for a long time, faith. "Then don't fight alone," he said simply. And for the first time, I let myself believe that maybe I didn't have to. The turning point came not from us, but from the people around us. A few neighbors began to show quiet support, a kind word, a smile that lingered, a casserole left on my porch with no note. Small gestures, maybe, but in Willow Creek they were monumental. It was as if Daniel's presence had cracked something open. His refusal to back down, his calm defiance, his insistence on seeing me fully, it made people question the narrative they'd clung to for years. Not everyone changed. Some never would. But enough did to make the air feel a little lighter. And with every small shift, I felt myself breathing easier. The night I realized I loved him wasn't marked by fireworks or drama. It was simple. We were sitting on the porch, sharing a blanket, the summer air cooling into fall. He was talking about a case he'd taken on, his hands moving as he explained, passion in every word. I wasn't even listening to the details. I was watching the way his mouth curved when he spoke, the way his eyes softened when they met mine, the way being near him felt less like a miracle and more like a truth I'd been waiting for. And I thought, this is it. This is what love feels like. Not the burning desperation I'd known before. Not the fear of being caught. Not the hollow ache of pretending. Just this steady, real, undeniable. I didn't tell him that night. I wasn't ready. But he must have seen it in my eyes because he smiled in a way that told me he already knew. And so, against all odds, we began to build something. Something fragile, yes. Something tested daily by whispers and stares. But something real. Something worth every scar it unearthed. The breaking point didn't arrive like a storm. Came quietly, disguised as an ordinary Tuesday. Daniel had been late getting home from court. His tie loosened, his face drawn in ways I hadn't seen before. I had dinner waiting takeout because I still couldn't cook without setting off alarms, and I thought maybe we could just sit, eat, and let the silence comfort us. But silence wasn't what we got. He closed the door, leaned against it, and for a long moment didn't move. Finally, he said, "They followed me." My chest tightened. "Who?" "A couple of guys from the diner. They trailed me after work. Waited until I parked. Said they didn't want people like me ruining their town." His jaw clenched. They knew. They knew about us. I froze, the walls of the studio suddenly too close. "What did you say?" "Nothing." I walked away. He looked at me then, eyes dark with something raw. "But it's only a matter of time, isn't it? They're not going to stop at words." My stomach dropped. I'd lived this before. The stares, the whispers, the shove in the hallway that turned into a fist. The night I came home with blood on my shirt and no one to defend me. That kind of fear doesn't leave your bones. And in that moment I wanted to run. "We should stop," I whispered, hating myself for the words even as they left my mouth. "Before it gets worse. Before, stop." His voice cracked, disbelief slicing through the air. "You think walking away now is going to keep you safe? You think hiding will make them forget? It's better than painting a target on your back." My throat burned. "I can handle what they do to me, Daniel. But you don't deserve this. You have a career, a future. Don't throw it away for me." For a heartbeat, the room was silent except for our uneven breathing. Then he stepped forward, closing the space between us, his voice steady but fierce. "I'm not here because it's easy," he said. "I'm here because it's worth it. You're worth it." His words should have healed me. Instead, they split me open, because I wanted to believe them so badly, and yet, all I could see was the wreckage of the last time I trusted love. So I did what I'd always done. I pulled away. That night, Daniel left without touching me. The sound of the door closing was louder than any argument we could have had. The days that followed were hollow. He still lived across the street. I still saw his car, his lights flickering on at night. But he didn't knock on my door. He didn't sit on my porch steps with coffee. The silence between us was a canyon, wide and cruel. The town noticed. They always noticed. And some of them smiled at the distance, like it proved their ugly point. I tried to throw myself into painting, but even the canvas betrayed me. Every stroke turned into him, his hands, his eyes, the way he had said "you're worth it," as if it were the simplest truth in the world. And every night, I lay awake wondering if I had just destroyed the one thing that had ever felt like home. The confrontation came a week later. I was leaving the hardware store when I saw them, two of the men who had followed Daniel. They blocked my path, their expressions sharp with cruelty. "Where's your boyfriend, huh?" one sneered. "Finally come to his senses?" My throat went dry. "Leave me alone." But they didn't. They shoved me back against the wall, voices low and venomous. "Men like you don't belong here. You think you can just flaunt it? You think this is New York City? This is our town." I braced for the hit. Old instincts told me not to fight back, not to give them more reason. But before the blow came, a voice cut through the air. "Step away from him, Daniel." He was there, eyes blazing, fists clenched at his sides. He didn't wait for permission. He stepped between me and them, his body a shield, his voice a blade. "You touch him again," and I swear the men laughed, but I saw the flicker of hesitation. Daniel wasn't like me. He wasn't afraid to be seen. He wasn't afraid to stand tall, even when the world wanted him to bow. Eventually, they backed off, muttering threats as they disappeared down the street. I was shaking, every nerve on fire. Daniel turned to me, his hands hovering like he wanted to hold me, but wasn't sure he could anymore. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. And for the first time, I broke. Tears spilled down my face, uninvited and relentless. "No," I choked out. "I'm not okay. I haven't been okay for years. And I don't know how to be Daniel. I don't know how to believe Thesis won't end the same way it always does." His arms were around me before I finished, pulling me in, grounding me in the heat of him. He held me like I wasn't broken glass, like I was something solid and whole. And against his chest, I heard his heart hammering just as wildly as mine. That night, we didn't talk much. We sat in silence in my studio, the weight of everything pressing in. But Daniel stayed. He stayed even when I told him I was afraid. He stayed even when I admitted I didn't know how to stop waiting for it all to fall apart. Then let it scare you, he whispered. But don't let it stop you. And something in me shifted. Because maybe the point wasn't to stop being afraid. Maybe the point was to love anyway. The following weeks weren't easy. The town didn't magically change. There were still whispers, still stares, still doors that closed a little too quickly when we passed by. But there were also moments that felt like light breaking through. The young cashier at the grocery store slipping me a note that said, "Simply, you're braver than you know." The librarian smiling as she handed me a book on queer artists, her fingers brushing mine in quiet solidarity. Even my father, though he didn't soften, stopped spitting venom every time he saw me. His silence wasn't approval, but it was a ceasefire. And for now, that was enough. Through it all, Daniel was there. He didn't hide. He didn't apologize. He walked beside me, steady and unyielding, as if daring the world to say he couldn't. And slowly, impossibly, I began to believe him. The moment that sealed it came late one night, after a long day in court for him and a long day of painting for me. We sat in the studio, surrounded by canvases that suddenly felt less like secrets and more like windows. "You ever think about leaving?" I asked. "All the time," he admitted. Then he looked at me, eyes fierce and tender all at once. "But not without you." My breath caught. He reached for my hand, lacing our fingers together. "I didn't come here to find you, but now that I have, I'm not letting go. Not because it's easy, not because it's safe, because it's right." And in that moment, the fear didn't vanish. But it stopped controlling me. Because love, I realized, wasn't about erasing the scars. It was about holding them together. That night, when he kissed me, it wasn't tentative. It was fierce, certain, a promise written in every press of his lips. And for the first time, I kissed him back with everything I had, without holding back, without hiding. Because he was right. We were worth it. Autumn crept into Willow Creek slowly, painting the trees in copper and gold, softening the air. For the first time in years, I didn't dread the changing season. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't alone. Daniel and I had weathered the worst of the storm. Not all of it, of course. The whispers never fully vanished, and some people still crossed the street when we passed. But we had survived, and that survival felt like its own kind of victory. I thought survival was the best I could hope for. Daniel taught me that maybe I could ask for more. It began with the art show. He brought it up one night, casually, as we sat on my porch drinking coffee. "You should show your work," he said, nodding toward the studio. I laughed, almost choking on my sip. "In this town? Are you out of your mind?" "I've been accused of worse," he said with a grin. Then, softer, "People deserve to see you, the real you, and maybe you deserve to let them." The thought terrified me. My art had always been private, a language only I spoke. To share it meant handing people the sharpest parts of me. But Daniel believed in it, believed in me with such quiet certainty that saying no felt impossible. So I said yes. The night of the show, I thought I might faint. My canvases lined the small community hall, every brushstroke exposed, every scar painted into color. I stood in the corner, heart pounding, braced for ridicule, for silence, for the slow sting of rejection. Instead, people came. Not everyone, not most, but enough. Neighbors I hadn't spoken to in years. Teenagers who lingered too long in front of the paintings of closed doors. Even Mrs. Parker, who pressed my hand as she whispered, "You're braver than you know." My father came, too. I saw him before he saw me, his shoulders rigid, his face unreadable. Part of me wanted to run, to hide behind Daniel, to disappear. But then he stood before one of my paintings, the one of a boy reaching for a door just out of reach, and his expression cracked. He turned to me, eyes wet in a way I'd never seen. "You did this?" "Yes," I whispered, my throat dry. He nodded, slow, as if something in him had shifted. "It's good." It wasn't an apology. It wasn't forgiveness. But it was a start. And for me, that was enough. After the show, Daniel found me outside, leaning against the cool brick wall, trying to steady my breathing. "You were incredible in there," he said, sliding beside me. "I thought I'd pass out." "You didn't." He brushed his thumb against my knuckles, his touch grounding. "You faced them. You showed them who you are. And they saw it." I looked at him, the weight of everything pressing in fear, hope, love so big it almost hurt. "I couldn't have done it without you." "Yes, you could have," he said firmly. "You just didn't believe it yet." And then he kissed me, under the glow of the streetlight, with the smell of autumn leaves in the air. A kiss that wasn't about hiding or surviving. A kiss that was about living. Life didn't transform overnight. It never does. There were still bad days, days when the old voices crept back in, telling me I wasn't enough, that love was dangerous, that I didn't deserve to be seen. But then there were mornings when Daniel would be in my kitchen, tie crooked, hair mussed, stealing toast as he rushed to court. There were evenings when we'd collapse on the porch steps, watching the sun bleed into the horizon, our shoulders pressed together. There were nights when his laughter filled the studio, turning it from a place of ghosts into a place of light. Little by little, those moments outweighed the rest. Winter came, snow blanketing the streets, softening the edges of the town that had once felt so sharp. Daniel and I decorated a Christmas tree together, him insisting on perfect symmetry while I deliberately hung ornaments at odd angles just to make him groan. "This is chaos," he said, holding a crooked star. "It's character," I argued, grinning. In the end, the tree looked messy and beautiful like us, and for the first time the house felt like home. One night, as the snow fell quietly outside, I found myself painting again, not just to survive, not to bleed out the ache, but to capture something real. Daniel came in, hair damp from a shower, pajama shirt hanging loose. He stopped in the doorway, watching. "What is it this time?" he asked. I stepped back, studying the canvas. It was two figures standing close, light wrapping around them, their hands almost touching but not quite. The kind of closeness that spoke louder than any kiss. "It's us," I said simply. He crossed the room, sliding an arm around my waist, pressing his lips to my temple. "Then it's perfect." And in that moment I believed him. Spring returned, bringing with it new whispers, different ones this time. Not all kind, but not all cruel either. Change came slowly to Willow Creek, but it came. The teenagers who once sneered now nodded in quiet respect. The librarian asked if I'd consider teaching an art class. Even the diner felt different, less suffocating, when Daniel walked in beside me with his head held high. We had carved out space for ourselves, not by fighting every battle, but by refusing to vanish. And somehow that was enough. The last piece of the story isn't dramatic. It isn't a fight or a revelation. It's a morning, ordinary and soft. I woke to the smell of coffee, sunlight spilling through the curtains. Daniel stood in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, humming under his breath. He looked at me like he always did, like I was the world, like he had found what he didn't even know he was searching for. And I realized then that love wasn't the firestorm I'd always feared. It was this. It was ordinary mornings and crooked Christmas stars. It was laughter on the porch and paint-stained hands held steady by lawyer-strong ones. It was being seen, truly seen, and choosing to stay. Once, I had believed I wasn't worthy of love. Now, standing in that kitchen with Daniel smiling at me, I knew I had been wrong. Because love wasn't about being worthy. It was about being brave enough to accept it. And together we were. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.